Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey was born on February 1818 and died on February 20, 1895. His cause of death was massive heart attack or stroke. Frederick Douglass was an African-American social reformer, orator, writer, and statesman. After escaping from slavery in Maryland, he became a national leader of an abolitionist movement from Massachusetts and New York. Gaining known from his dazzling oratory and incisive anti-slavery writings, in his time he was described by abolitionists as a living counter-example to slaveholders' arguments that slaves lacked the intellectual capacity to function as independent American citizens. Northerners at the time found it hard to believe that such a great oratory had once been a slave. Douglass wrote several autobiographies. He described his experiences as a slave in his 1845 autobiography, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, which became a bestseller and was influential in promoting the cause of abolition, as was his second book, My Bandage and My Freedom. After the Civil War, Douglass remained an active campaigner against slavery and wrote his last autobiography, Life and the Times of Frederick Douglass. First published in 1881 and revised in 1882, 3 years before his death, it covered events during and after the Civil War. Douglass also actively supported women's suffrage and held several public offices. Without his approval, Douglass became the first African-American nominated for Vice President of the United States as the running mate and vice presidential nominee of Victoria Woodhull on the Equal Rights Party ticket. Frederick had a hard time with injustice. He was a slave for a long time and also had to do so many slavery work until he had had enough and escaped slavery. And when they were looking for him, he decided to change his personality and change his new name to Frederick Douglass. After Frederick Douglass suffered from his injustice and escaped from jail, he decided to stop slavery and make sure slavery wasn't allowed. So he decided to make a speech to all the blacks and all the whites to do a campaign about stopping slavery and making sure no slaves suffer from what he suffered before. The most influential African American of the 19th century, Douglass made a career of agitating the American conscience. He spoke and wrote on behalf of a variety of reform causes: women's rights, temperance, peace, land reform, free public education, and the abolition of capital punishment. But he devoted the bulk of his time, immense talent, and boundless energy to ending slavery and gaining equal rights for African Americans.